Zephin Blacksburg here with Cait Flanders, and Cait is the author of the award-winning personal finance blog Blonde on a Budget and the creator of the Mindful Budgeting program. She started the blog to document her debt repayment journey and paid off $30,000 of debt in just 2 years. After some lifestyle inflation crept back in, Cait put herself on a year-long shopping ban, which she successfully completed on July 6th of 2015. At the same time she started her shopping ban, she decided to embrace minimalism and toss 70% of her belongings. Cait now puts most of her energy into sharing all she's learned in her journey to become a more conscious consumer and the joy she's found since living with less, in hopes it will inspire others to stop making impulse purchases and start making more mindful decisions about how they handle their personal finances. And Cait, it's so great to have you here today because I love talking about money. That was like the first thing I was afraid of becoming an entrepreneur. So I think you're the perfect person to chat with today.
Awesome. Yeah. It's so exciting. Anytime you can talk about money with someone. Yeah, just a great conversation to have. It's such a taboo topic, so I think it's great when you can find people to talk to about it.
And people are so afraid of everything with it. They're afraid to buy things, they're afraid to spend money, they're afraid to save money. Like they just don't know what to do with it. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about, like where did this $30,000 of debt come from and how did you manage to pay this off in just 2 years?
Okay, so the $30,000. So I realized I was maxed out with that amount of debt when I was 25, just about 26. So you would think, or like I get this a lot, that you would think that a lot of it was student loans, but actually only about $4,500 of it was student loans, and all the rest of it was consumer debt.
Hmm.
So some of it was, I financed a brand new car, and it was like on the cheaper end of the scale. It was only $15,000. But yeah, I financed a brand new car. I just used my credit cards for absolutely everything. Bought all brand new furniture when I moved into an apartment. Just stuff like that. Like, and I would go out to restaurants. Like every time friends were like, "You want to go out for dinner?" Like I would say yes, even if it was like 7 days a week. I would say yes. And I just used my credit cards to pay for everything. So that's where it all came from. How I paid it off. A huge, the biggest piece of that puzzle, I would say, is my blog, even though that sounds so weird because your blog doesn't pay off your debt for you. And people ask me this a lot. I've never monetized my blog. And so I never, had ads up or anything that was helping me make extra money. But I created Blonde on a Budget as a way to just stay accountable to myself. So if you go back to the old posts, they are awful. It's super boring. They're literally just weekly spending sheets. So it's like Monday, $2.91 at Starbucks. Tuesday, $2.91 at Starbucks. And so I just did it to stay accountable to myself and decided I needed to live on a really tight budget and just kind of get my crap together. So I just over 2 years, I did things like I think I got my hair cut once in a year. I never went shopping really. Restaurants were kind of cut. Like I'd give myself a small budget to go out with people. Just stuff like that. I just really realized that, I couldn't afford the lifestyle that I'd been swiping for. And so it was just time to change it.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to take notice of because so many people are are doing this right now and they haven't really stopped to look at the damage that it's caused so far, right? Like it's so easy to just ignore it and let it keep running up. You know, it's like running a tab at a bar. You don't really think about how many drinks you've ordered, until you go, whoa, the room just started spinning. Maybe it's time to close the tab,
Yeah.
And so I think that it's really great that you had the ability to kind of stop yourself and turn it around in such a quick amount of time too. That's very impressive. Were you ever worried kind of going into this when you looked at it and said, I have to start being a little tighter on what I'm spending on? Were you worried that you were going to like miss out on any experiences, or like did you have any fears kind of going into this of like, did it ever like ruin an experience where friends are like, hey, we want to go do this thing, and you're like, oh, I can't do that? Did that ever come up?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, everything was kind of all right. I actually realized pretty quickly that I had no problem just saying to friends, instead of going out to dinner, why don't we do a barbecue at your house or something like that? Because once you kind of frame the conversation that way, it's really interesting how many people are totally okay with that because they probably don't want to spend all the money it takes to go out anyways. So for the most part, it was okay. But yeah, it was about maybe only 4 or 5 months into it when my friends, there was probably a group of like 10 to 12 of us, everyone decided they were going to go on this surfing trip to Nicaragua.
Wow.
And it's so cheap to go there. And so the whole thing was going to cost maybe 1,200 bucks. And so everyone was like, you have to come, you have to come. And I just was like, I can't. And the thing is, they didn't know about my debt. I just like kind of used homework as an excuse and like life, and I was too busy and stuff like that. So I didn't actually tell them why I couldn't go, but yeah, there were a few experiences like that. That one will always stick out because it was only $1,200. I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have been such a great trip.
Yeah, that's a pretty cheap vacation.
Yeah, yeah, but no, I was so focused. Like I just all I could think of was how awful it felt to be maxed out, and that I just wanted to never feel that way again.
Yeah. When you started to save up and, look at the different things that you were spending on, was there something that surprised you that might surprise other people that's kind of like a money pit where just they keep spending on things? Like I know that I have a lot of things that automatically deduct like every month. Like, there's gym membership, there's my office is a co-working space, so I pay a monthly recurring fee. Like, did you find anything that really surprised you where you were like, holy crap, like I'm spending all this money every single month on the same thing and I'm not even using it?
I mean, so takeout coffee was a big one for me. It was one of those things like it was just a daily habit, and my drinks, like the drink I used to order, was less than $3, so I never really thought a lot of it. Once I added it up, I mean, in the grand scheme of things of my overall budget, like it was like $80 or something. Like that's not going to make or break the budget, but that's a lot of money. That's just going to something I could make at home.
Yeah.
What else was there? I had a really bad, like it's kind of funny. I don't have any, or I've never identified as a shopaholic, but I definitely had like a book buying addiction. And I think, like Amazon's not evil for doing this, but things like Amazon made it too easy because books were cheap, and every time you spent $25, you get free shipping. And so, yeah, so I would buy like any book that I thought I even wanted to read, probably every 2 to 3 weeks. But I, again, never did the math because I was just putting them on credit, and I used to ignore my credit card statements like none other. And then when I really did the math, and I was like, wow, like I'm probably spending $60 to $90 a month on books, and I'm not even reading them all. Like I don't have time to read 7 books a month.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big one that I just never paid attention to.
I'm actually kind of in the same boat because, I've got Amazon Prime, so I get 2 day shipping.
Hmm.
And on top of that, they now open up this new thing with Prime where I can get things sent to my house within an hour if I pay $5.99 shipping, because they just opened like this new warehouse nearby. So a lot of zip codes, a lot of areas around the country are getting this where it's like if you need something right away, they can send it to you within an hour, and it's crazy. So I can see how it's very easy to kind of get caught in that trap. And I too buy way more books than I need. I intend to read them all, and I will eventually. But
Hmm.
like you said, going and buying 5 or 7 books a month. I'm a slow reader. I read maybe 2 books a month.
Totally. Yeah.
So I definitely see where that comes from. And then on top of that, having a lot of stuff, because I know that we're going to get to that in a couple minutes here. So I definitely want to come back to what do we do with having a lot of stuff? And I know you have some experience with that. But before we get there, um, how did you teach yourself, or were there any resources out there that you went to look for when it came to, okay, like I've got to sit down and look at my credit score and look at my statements and figure out where stuff's going? Or was it more of, I just made this Excel sheet and started tracking everything, and it just, I made the changes? How did that all play out for you?
There were a few different things. So one, because I'm Canadian, it may not, although no, her spreadsheets are all interactive and totally could work for anyone. So there's a personal finance expert in Canada. Her name's Gail Vaz Oxlade.
Okay.
And like she would be like your Dave Ramsey for Canada, like in the sense like she's had tons of TV shows, radio, tons of books. And I'm very grateful now. She's a mentor and a friend, which is amazing. But I found like her website and I've read a couple of her books. She has this one book that's definitely relevant to anyone, no matter where you are. It's called Debt Free Forever.
Nice.
And it really taught me about how to budget, how to actually look at how much you're spending, saving, where you're allocating, how much should be going towards each thing each month. So her book was great. And then, yeah, she has a ton of free interactive worksheets on her site. So there's a budgeting one. It was pretty awesome because you could just punch in things like, my rent is this and car insurance is this, et cetera, et cetera. And she has ideas of, like 35% should go to housing and 15% should go to debt and et cetera. And as you're punching them in, it would fill in that second portion that would then say like, oh, you're putting only 33% towards housing. So you're like, awesome. So that was a great little worksheet. And then otherwise, though, I tracked everything by hand. I did create spreadsheets, like I did create a monthly budget spreadsheet, but tracking my spending, I did by hand every single day.
Wow. And so does that mean like you've got to carry a notebook with you, or what was like your method when you first started that?
I had one, it was actually, oh man, like the minimalist in me now, it makes me feel sick. So I had this old notebook that in the back had maybe 10 to 15 blank pages left. Like all the rest of it had been filled in. But the back had these few pages left. So I just decided to use those. And so I would just write down every day what I was spending. But it was like a scribbled up mess. Like it didn't look good. It was all over the map. Somehow I made sense of it. So for the first probably 3 months, I used that. And then, yeah, I had a small notebook that I didn't always carry it with me everywhere. I make all my purchases on debit or credit. So, even if it's just every Sunday, like I'll go back and check, like log into my accounts and check everything. But then I do write it down by hand. It's just different when you look at it by hand and write it down
Yeah.
by like there's something about putting pen to paper that's so different than just looking at random numbers on a screen. So.
Yeah, I think your brain processes it differently because you're using different parts of your brain when you actually speak than when you're moving your hands. So you're remembering things better when you actually write it out. And, I've never been the biggest fan of writing, I've just never enjoyed it. And actually, the real reason is my mom was an occupational therapist. And growing up, she used to force me to be her guinea pig to learn how to, like, correctly hold the pen or pencil. So I never actually did because I taught myself this rebellious way of holding a pencil. But... So I've never enjoyed writing for like the dumbest reason ever. But there's also a lot of tools out there now. Like I have this great app, at least for my business stuff, where it's awesome. You can like take a picture of your receipts and it like inputs all your business expenses. And so I know there's a lot of really good resources out there now where, if you choose not to use a notebook, you can keep track of it online, and a lot of tools there. But yeah, I mean, there's little moleskin notebooks, like they're easy to fit in your pocket. Highly recommend those. I use that just for like business ideas and when I'm like working with clients, so that's a great option too.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you talk about minimalism a lot, and this is something that I've always been interested in, but being a videographer, obviously, like I have all these cameras and lenses and all sorts of stuff, so like it has been very hard for me living wise right now to be minimalist, at least just with my business and all my gear that I have. But when I travel, I'm always one of those guys now who at least wants to just take like one backpack and just stuff everything I need into it. Where did that come up for you? Like, what was it that made you realize I have all this stuff and I'm not using it?
It's kind of funny. I feel like it was a bunch of different events that all led up to kind of one day. But looking back, I will say I moved 5 times in 2013. And when you move that many times and you see how much stuff you have, but how much you're literally just like taking from one closet, putting in a box, moving it, and then taking out of the box and putting it back in a closet, you start to realize like you're just storing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of boxes. So I feel like I'd been thinking about it for a couple of years, like that I had too much stuff, but you still just, you have all those thoughts of like, well, I probably need it one day, or there's some reason I'm holding on to it, or so-and-so bought me this, or Just little like attachments that you've made to all these objects, so you keep them. And then last summer, so it was early July 2014, I it was actually really weird in Vancouver. It's not usually very hot in the summer. Like it's pretty warm. Like it'll be in the 80s, but it was probably pushing like almost into 100 degrees.
Wow.
And it was smoking hot. And I remember, like, because it's never really hot, we don't really have air conditioning on the West Coast. Like, it's not really a thing. You can buy portable ones, but like you'll never really find a home that has it built in. Like, it's just
Wow.
not that common. So, yeah, so it was so hot and I was like miserable in my place. And I remember walking around and getting so annoyed looking for a couple of the smallest things. So one was a can opener. And it sounds so silly, but it's like I'm one person living alone in a one-bedroom apartment. How can I not find a can opener? And again, like I'm not a hoarder. I've always been incredibly neat and organized. Like when I was a kid, my mom never had to ask me to clean my room. Like I used to like organize my books like in color order and like I've always been really organized. So you wouldn't think there would be that much stuff or that much mess, but I couldn't find this can opener for the life of me. And so then as I'm like going through drawers and stuff, I'm like, I am starting to identify like, you know what? I've never used this. I've never used that. Why do I still own this? And it's annoying that I can't find this one thing because I'm looking behind all this other stuff that I never even use. So yeah, oh, and I started looking at things like clothes. Like I'd lost a bunch of weight, but I had all these clothes still from when I was about 30 pounds heavier. And I'm looking at all that being like, why am I holding on to that? Like I just like you don't want to keep on that
Yeah,
stuff
like I'm never gonna wear it again.
and it's filling your drawers and it just yeah like looking at it makes you feel bad or books too like I said I bought too many books and looking at books where yeah like I wanted to read them once upon a time but now every time I look at them on my bookshelf I actually feel guilty like I feel guilty that I spent money I've never touched them and I don't even know if I ever will and so yeah, there was just this day looking for the can opener where I walking around and getting more and more mad at stuff that I couldn't find that I actually needed. And I just started emptying my closets and going through all of it. And I wish there was a better story. It was more just like I just realized I could not deal with this and I actually didn't need any of this stuff and it was time to get rid of it.
So when you started doing all this, you were blogging about the finances and watching your budget. You started to become more minimalist, and I'm assuming your friends probably had to start noticing at some point or another what was happening. Did it ever rub off on anybody that you knew, or was it kind of like a secret most of the time?
The minimalism stuff?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everyone knew. Yeah, I wrote about it pretty extensively, and everyone knew. I think people get or everyone has a very different idea of what the word minimalist means. It's not necessarily about only owning like 100 things or walking into someone's place and they have like nothing, or they like only have a bed on the floor and like no nightstands. Like I still have furniture, I still have stuff, I still have 40 books or something. Like I still own things. I just don't, yeah, I don't own all like the what ifs. Like I don't own the like, what if I want that one day? What if I need it in 6 months? What if this person gets married and I want to like wear this outfit? Or I don't have any of that stuff. I just have what I need every single day. And what, helps my life be a little easier. So, coffee things and like you said, like with your video stuff, like all of that because it adds value to your life. Like you could still get rid of other things, but keep all of that in your mind. You could still call yourself a minimalist because it adds value to your life. If it was just sitting there unused and made you feel bad, then you should probably get rid of the things that you don't use and make you feel bad for not using.
Makes
But
sense.
everything else you can keep. You can have as much as you want. Like all the minimalists that I've like connected with over years, like everyone is so different. Like there's this one guy, Colin, he owns like 40 things and lives out of a backpack. But then
Wow.
other people have, 7 kids and live in a house and have lots of stuff. It's just only the stuff that they need. So yeah, it definitely rubbed off on people though. I think that was one of the coolest things. Like I started getting a lot of tweets that would be like, I'm channeling my inner blonde on a budget and cleaning out my closet. Or yeah, just stuff like that. I had people sending me pictures of like how many bags of stuff they were getting rid of. One of my girlfriends like filled her hallway and it probably had like 9 bags and 4 or 5 boxes of stuff that she was getting rid of. So yeah, it definitely rubbed off. I don't think it was a bad thing at all.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. I mean, it's something I've always, inspired to get towards. I mean, I feel relatively minimalist, but definitely know that I could do better. Like, I'm looking at a bookshelf over here and I'm like, all right, I got some books to give away.
Yeah.
So, along with, this whole going minimalist and watching your budget, you started on a year-long shopping ban, which is supposed to end at the time of this recording. It's supposed to end in 4 days, but you told me something unique about this. So I'd love for you to share with us what this shopping ban is, how that's impacted you, and then the little surprise that you dropped on me before we jumped on the call.
So the shopping ban, yeah, I decided to start it at the exact same time I did this huge declutter. Basically because as I was doing the decluttering, it became very eye-opening how much stuff I actually had and that I wasn't living without anything. So as you're going through everything, and people don't have to do this, but I actually took inventory of everything I kept. And it was more, I don't still maintain that inventory or anything like that. Like I don't know how many things I own. But it was more because like I think we often forget how much stuff we actually own. And it can be even little things. Like you might forget that you have 2 rolls of tape, but then when you need to wrap a gift, you might be like, oh, I should go buy some tape. But like, no, you actually have some in a drawer or wherever. So just even little things you forget that you have. And so I took inventory and I just realized like I have so much stuff still, but all of this is enough that I could easily live off of for a year and not need more. And so I created a very small list. It was 5 items it was like my approved shopping ban list of things that I was allowed to buy in the next year. And it was because of that declutter, I was able to identify those few things. But yeah, I just decided that was it. Other than like toiletries and like whatever I needed that I ran out of, everything else was cut. So like no clothes, no shoes, no books, which was huge for me. I also did no takeout coffee, which was probably the toughest for me because I had such a daily habit of getting it, right? So no takeout coffee. Yeah, it was a lot. Oh man, what have I learned from it? It's- in the yeah, there's so many like lessons around it. I'm working on this like epic post about it right now where I'm trying to wrap it all up. I would say that I've learned that you just don't need stuff. Like I watch friends all the time who go and, buy new outfits, new jewelry, new accessories, new cosmetics, new whatever and all this stuff. And I'm like, if you're finding joy in it and it actually provides some value, you can buy whatever you want. I would never tell people to like not spend money. But if you don't actually need it, like it's just been really fascinating to see how much I need to live and be happy. And I feel like I'm like the happiest and best version of myself that I've ever been. Because I just don't value stuff anymore. I don't value buying books. I don't value owning books. What I valued was reading. So like that was one big lesson. I don't value takeout coffee. Like I do like occasionally going for coffee with a friend. And so 9 months into the shopping ban, I was like, it's so annoying of how restrictive I was being. So then I started, like, I think in the last few months, I went for maybe like 5 or 6 coffees with friends and just decided like, that's not sustainable to like never do that because I actually really enjoy that. But the daily coffee, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And yeah, but just, I don't know. I don't know. It's just like, I don't value stuff. And so I just feel good. Like once all of that is gone, you have so much more time to focus on the things that you actually do enjoy and that do bring you value. And I also think that in the last few months of it, it was too easy.
Mm.
So that's why I've decided I'm going to do it for 2 years, which was the little surprise.
That's awesome. Are you changing the rules up at all? Are you gonna, add anything to it that you found, you really do kind of need other, obviously we need food, toiletries, things like that. But, are you gonna have like a day where it's like, hey, I outgrew these t-shirts. I need a couple more because there's holes in the rest of them. Like, how's that gonna work?
Yeah, so I would say the only thing I'll really need to buy at this point in this year is clothes because when I got rid of everything, I'm literally down to 40, maybe even like 38 items of clothing. And that's all pants, shirts, tank tops, sweaters, whatever. Like I have 38 things. It all fits in one suitcase. So
Nice.
it's been great because I realized like I'm someone who usually only wears about 4 to 5 of the same outfits anyways. So it was easy to do that. But yes, your shirts do start to get a little old. So I think what I'm gonna do, like I haven't fully mapped out the details, but I think I'll be allowed to replace things. So if I decide like there's a couple of t-shirts for sure that should be replaced, but they have to be then gotten rid of. So I can't just be like adding things. Like if it has to be like the one in, one out rule. So yeah, so if I replace things, that will be okay. Um, Other rule, I think, yeah, the takeout coffee thing will continue. Like I'll be allowed to go for a couple with friends, but it can't be, a daily habit ever again. The books has to continue. The books was fascinating because I think I counted that I had 55 books I'd never read and I kept them.
Wow.
And throughout the year, I actually got rid of more and more and more of them because I was not even because I was reading them. I just kept looking at them throughout the year, being like, I'm never gonna read it, and it's kind of too bad that I spent the money. But me holding on to it, every time I look at it, I feel like guilty, and that's not a good feeling. So I donated all books to my library, like my local library. So someone will read them.
And
So
did you like spring for a Kindle or something like that so you can still read?
Oh, that's actually fine. So I have one. I have
Okay.
one already, and but it's actually like kind of broken. So around it was Black Friday, so like only 4 or 5 months into the shopping ban. Black Friday, the e-reader that I want or that I have, like the new version or whatever, was like $50 off, which is unheard of. Like it never happens because they're only what 120 anyways. So
Yeah.
super cheap. So mine's broken right now. Like it works, but you have to insert a tiny pin into the reset button to make it work. Like the power on and off button doesn't work anymore. So it still works though. So I convinced myself when I saw that sale that buying it would remove this like daily annoyance in my life and that I was allowed to spend this like $70, et cetera, et cetera. And so I actually convinced myself enough to the point that I bought it. And then like 5 seconds later, I realized the justifications that I'd been telling myself that made it okay to spend that money and immediately canceled the order. And what was interesting about that is that like I don't think I then touched my e-reader for like a month after that. So it's
Wow.
like I wouldn't have actually needed it. It would not have solved a daily annoyance. Like I think we tell ourselves things like that all the time. Oh, actually like a month ago I was on that road trip with Sarah Peterson, and when I got home from it, my I had one pair of Toms that I was wearing for the past like many months. And I don't even know what happened to them, but they like the sole of them, this wicked tear happened, and to the point like I could not wear them anymore. And immediately my mind is like, oh, I need to replace them. But then I was like, you know what? It's summer. I don't actually need them. I have sandals, etc. Like I'm fine. And it's been like 6 weeks, and I haven't even thought about it.
Nice.
So I think, yeah. So the rules, no, I think any like replacing things will be okay. The one thing that I want to do to really change it is, and this is more a test for myself, but also because I think it'll be interesting to readers, is I want to keep track of everything I actually do buy. So things like, even it sounds weird, like toilet paper, toothpaste, just stuff like that. Maybe not food because everyone eats different amounts of food and stuff, but the things that I actually do buy, because I think again, people think we need a lot more. You go to Costco and you buy a thing of like 10 toothpaste, but that's like a 2 year supply or more of toothpaste. So how much do you actually need to buy in a year? So yeah, that because I realized at the end of the shopping ban, that was the one thing I wish I had done. I wish I had tracked everything I bought. So I was like, maybe I'll just do it for a second year and then I'll actually do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who do, like income reports where they track their income to be transparent. But I think it would be really neat to see from you kind of the contrast of, here's my income, but here's also how much I'm spending. And because at the end of the year, you can kind of go back, or even at the end of each month, and be like, here's how much money extra is left over,
Hmm.
that's going into whether it's bank account, retirement, whatever. and really show to people, here's what I bought. Here's the one thing that I had to buy because, maybe there was something wrong with the car and I had to pay for a repair or something. But like, it's really great that you're being reasonable in your justification. It's not just like, well, I can't buy anything. And at the same time, though, it's not like, well, I can make an excuse here and I can make an excuse there. It sounds like it's very kind of evened out for you. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, everything's been very calculated. Like, there were things like actually throughout the ban, there were two times where I did have to buy things. So one was, although it was interesting, at the beginning of the shopping ban, I had, or like months leading up to it, I was like, when the iPhone 6 comes out, I'm going to get it. And
Yeah.
so, of course, that came out 2 months into the shopping ban. So I'm like, well, I'm not getting it. And I still had, like, I was still holding on to an old iPhone 4S and it turned off, like, it was so busted. It turned itself off, like, every day. And so I'd be, like, out driving or wherever and, like, then need to call a friend when I got to pick them up at their house or something like that. And then I'd look at my phone and be like, oh, you just turned yourself off. Okay. Um, and so in April, I think it was, my phone just turned itself off and never turned itself back on. So it's like, I need a phone. But then it was really interesting because I went and bought it. And the delayed gratification was so interesting because then I actually didn't really care about which phone I got. And I knew in all of that time, like, because I hadn't been allowed to upgrade, you just start to realize, like, all your phone is a tool that's meant to help you, like, communicate with family and friends. Like, that's what it's there for. And it still did its job. So I don't need to constantly be, like, upgrading to the newest and the latest and stuff like that because it's doing its job.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. But so, yeah, so no, everything's been pretty calculated. And yeah, there are things that you do just need. Like, that happens. Yeah, it's still a challenge when you're like, oh, like this shirt's pretty old, but I'm not really allowed to buy anything right now. Oh, I guess I'll just keep wearing it. Sometimes it's tough, but yeah, I think a second year will be really interesting.
I tell you what, I've become like a pro at collecting free t-shirts. I probably have too many t-shirts and I have to give some away. But if anyone's trying to be minimalist, honestly, volunteer for our youth group. I volunteer for a youth group and they give away new t-shirts at like every convention they do. And they do like 3 or 4 of them a year. And then, my local chapter will get new t-shirts every year. And so if you want like 5 or 6 new free t-shirts every single year,
Go
definitely
volunteer.
just go volunteer with a youth group. That's my best advice for that one.
That's awesome.
Like I actually have like 2 out of my 4 dresser drawers are like dedicated to t-shirts because I just have way too many. So
I believe that. That's very common for guys. I don't know what it is. I
I
think
don't know.
have 5, and guys seem to own like 50 plus.
And I never wear like half of them, so I'm sure I'll have to take your advice here and do some cleaning out here soon. But yeah, this has been really cool to hear from you, and I'm excited to see how the second year goes, and see if any new challenges arise, and what you learn from a second year around, because I'm sure it's going to be different from the first time. And do you have any cool resources that people should definitely be checking out on your website or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, like if they're interested in following everything, I'm gonna change the landing page in the next few days. So my just blondeonabudget.ca or .com /shopping ban with a hyphen in between. Right now, just list the rules and stuff like that. But I'm gonna change the page so it kind of lists, all the little monthly updates that I've done and stuff like that. So that it would be one. Otherwise, it's actually a good question. I should probably look at. There are a couple books that I read throughout it about like why people buy, mostly why women shop, which I didn't identify with all of it, but it was still pretty interesting. I should add them to that page though.
Yeah, definitely. Cool deal. And then what's the easiest way to find you on Facebook? Is it facebook.com/blonde on a budget?
Blonde on a Budget blog.
Okay.
Blonde on a Budget is just my personal page.
Cool.
But I'm on Twitter more than anything else.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
So
your
just
Twitter handle?
At Blonde on a Budget.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. So a lot of great ways to keep track of what's going on, to kind of follow this new year that you're moving into, and lots of exciting things going on. So, thanks so much for spending some time today and sharing, your tips and advice for how others can live minimalist and kind of take on the whole budgeting mentality. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.